You've rightly talked, or you and I have both rightly talked a lot about Drag Queen Storytime, which is part of the global LGBTIQA+ political movement strategy to induct our children into gender fluid ideology and queer theory and sexualised concepts. They're quite upfront about that. Now, over several years, it's been getting foothold here in Australia, but mainstream Australians are beginning to push back. Most recently, just a couple of weeks ago, at Monash City Council's library in Melbourne. Now, if you believe the mainstream media, the only people opposed to Drag Queen Storytime are neo-Nazis. Take a look.
The city of Monash has been forced to cancel a children's drag-themed storytime event after staff were bombarded with death threats from neo-Nazis and protesters. Police were forced to intervene after white supremacist Thomas Sewell vowed to crash the library reading. Lana Murphy explains.
With narrow views but loud voices.
Leave the children alone!
A small but raucous crowd made their feelings clear.
Monash Council is committed to child safety and all events and programs are developed in line with this commitment.
And today, they won.
It's really shattering.
A drag queen hosted storytime at Oakley Library cancelled after organisers, hosts and staff were told they'd be killed.
So, Kirralie, what's going on there?
Well, look, I mean, any threats are unacceptable and ought to be condemned, 100%. But I think you will find that the majority of people at that meeting and the majority of mums and dads in this country have never made any threats, don't intend on making any threats, but they're very, very serious about child protection and safeguarding when it comes to the sort of materials that are being presented to their children and the fact that adult males who are appropriating stereotypes of women, very hypersexualised, caricatures, making a mockery of women, are the ones reading these books to our children. We have every right to be upset and we have every right to object to taxpayer and ratepayer funds being used to support these adult male entertainers who belong in private bars, not in front of an audience of small children.
Kirralie, how did this neo-Nazi thing, this seems to be the go-to now for anyone trying to discredit ordinary mums and dads, and that's what we saw in that crowd in the footage there. There were no neo-Nazis there, but the best I could find was some neo-Nazi posted something on a Facebook page, and therefore that leads the news event about the protest. It had nothing to do with that protest. This is a defamation of ordinary mainstream Australians, isn't it?
Yeah, the media just love the narrative and want to push, this extremist view every time and paint ordinary mums and dads who are very concerned about this issue as some far-right extremists. And we're not. If neo-Nazis co-opt, this, or hijack, in other words, this cause, there's not much that can be done about it, but you certainly don't need to shine a spotlight on them. They are not the ones leading this. They are not the ones who are concerned. We are concerned and we have every right to be concerned.
Yeah, now this is where the framing of this protest, it's so important that we break it down because, Victorian Premier, Labor Premier Dan Andrews seized on the opportunity to further denounce mainstream concern about the sexualisation of children. And this is what he had to say in Parliament. Let's take a look at this and then we want to talk about it after we've watched it.
With not an exercise of free speech, but an exercise in hate speech, violence, bigotry, racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, the list goes on.
Now, Kirralie, the lady in that Channel 9 news clip who said, leave our kids alone, okay, she was a bit hot under the collar. You can understand the emotion, and that may not have been the best way to express it, but she's not a bigot or a hater for expressing that point of view, is she?
Absolutely not. And Dan Andrews lives in a bubble where he doesn't even let, people oppose him. He protects himself and keeps himself, excluded from the general population. And the reality is social media and all the comments after his comments were opposed to him and very upset that he would use such extremist language to paint genuine concerns from mums and dads about the sexualisation of their children. There is never an acceptable excuse why our children should be sexualised, especially by adult males who are hypersexualised.